Alright lads, welcome back to the channel. Today in this video we're going to be going over each championships teams that are going to be in the championship for the 2021 season. We're going to be going over their biggest win and their biggest loss in their club's entire history from when they were formed. We're going to be doing this in alphabetical order, and then at the end I'm going to be making a table out of the goal differences between the two games. So let's say one team wins 11-0 and then their biggest loss was 8-0, then they will have a goal difference of 4, that kind of thing, and then whoever has the highest goal difference will be top and whoever's the lowest or bottom, and then yeah, basically ranking. It's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to be doing it alphabetically, starting off with Barnsley. As I've just said, we're going to be starting with Barnsley, and they were formed in 1887. Their biggest win was 9-0 against Loughborough United in 1899, and their biggest loss was also 9-0, but at this time it was against Notts County in 1927. As you may notice, those dates are quite a while back, and most of them probably will be, as obviously the game back then was very more attack minded, and defensively the game has become stronger defensively through periods as the game has just modernised a bit more. But yeah, back in the day, like a while back in like the 18 to 1900s, teams should just basically, there was like 7 up front, one of the formations, I'm pretty sure it was. It's ridiculous. It's a very attack-minded game. But yeah, Barnsley starting off, they start off with a 0 goal difference, pretty average, probably down near the bottom of the table. But yeah, we're going to move on to the next one now. Second team is going to be Birmingham City. They were formed in 1875, and they have teams they beat 3 times with this score, and their biggest win was 12-0. And it was against 3 teams. They beat Nottingham Forest 12-0 in 1899. Walsall 12-0 in 1892 and Doncaster 12-0 in 1905. Their biggest loss was 9-1, and they had that loss against 2 teams. 9-1 against Blackburn in 1895, and then their second 9-1 loss was against Wednesday, funnily enough, in 1930. So Birmingham, they're coming in second as the second team we're going through, and to be fair, they actually got a solid goal difference of 4 there. I reckon they'll be up near the top of the table. The third team is Blackburn Rovers, and like Birmingham, they were also formed in 1875. Their biggest win was an 11-0 win over Rosendale United in 1884, whereas their biggest loss was 8-0 against Arsenal in 1937. I think that says, yeah, that's what I've put. 8-0 loss against Arsenal in 1937, therefore making their goal difference 3, which is relatively average, because I've already gone through and sorted out all the goal differences, which I think would be around mid-table, maybe up to the higher end. But yeah, pretty average score there from Blackburn. Fourth team on the list now, obviously, is Bournemouth, as we are going in alphabetical order, and they were formed in, I think that's 1899. I don't know why it looks like a 2 there. They were formed in 1899, like I've just said. Their biggest win was 11-0 versus Margate in 1970, and their biggest loss was 9-0 against Lincoln in 1982. So 2 relatively recent games there as their biggest win and loss. But yeah, winning 11-0 and losing 9-0, that makes their goal difference 2, which again, that's around mid-table like Blackburn's score was, and a relatively average one, to be fair to Bournemouth. But yeah, a solid score nonetheless, because there are some teams whose goal difference is like below 0 in the minuses. Fifth team on the list now is going to be Brentford, the team that missed out in the playoffs last season. They were formed in 1899. Their biggest win was a solid 9-0 win over Wrexham in 1963. A little more recent than a lot of these teams. Their biggest loss was 7-0. They lost this lost this scoreline 3 times, 7-0. Lost 7-0 against Swansea in 1926. 7-0 against Walsall in 1957, and probably the most recent one on the list, they lost 7-0 against Peterborough in 2007, a very recent scoreline there. So yeah, Brentford, in the end, despite they lost 7-0 3 times, they're coming in with a pretty average scoreline or goal difference here of 2, which again, pretty bang average, probably down near the bottom of the table, but again, just an average scoreline from Brentford as they finish with the goal difference of 2. Sixth on the list is Bristol City. They were formed in 1894, and their biggest win was an 11-0 win against Chichester in 1960. So pretty recent compared to a lot of the ones on this list. Their biggest loss on the other hand, was a 9-0 loss against Coventry in 1934. Therefore, giving them a goal difference which is similar to Brentford. Well, no, the same to Brentford as 2. But Bristol's obviously, they won 11-0, lost 9-0. Brentford's won 9-0, lost 7-0. So yeah, again, a pretty average score there from Bristol City. But yeah, they'll probably be down near the bottom of the table with a goal difference of 2. 7th team on the list, and this is the first team which sees a real decent goal difference here, and it's Cardiff City, formed in 1899. Their biggest win was 16-0, a very solid win, but it's nothing compared to one of the ones coming up, I can tell you that much. They beat Knighton Town, that's hard to say that, 16-0 in 1961. Their biggest loss, on the other hand, was 11-2 against, it was 11-2 against Sheffield United in 1926, therefore giving them a goal difference, a very solid one. This will probably be top 3, maybe top 2 of a solid goal difference of 7, which is a very good scoreline there from Cardiff, which will probably place them in and around the top spots. Moving on to newly promoted Coventry City. They were formed in 1883, and their biggest win is a 9-0 win over Bristol City in 1934, which I'm pretty sure was Bristol City's biggest loss, yeah, just to confirm that. Their biggest loss was against Coventry, as I've just said, and it was 9-0 to Coventry that game. Coventry's biggest loss, on the other hand, they conceded 11 goals but scored 2 themselves, meaning their biggest loss was an 11-2 loss against Berwick Town, the team of all teams in 1901, a very surprising one there, which leaves Coventry with a very average to poor score of 0 goal difference. Moving on now to Derby County. They were formed in 1884. Their biggest win was 12-0 against Finn Harps. I think that's it. Yeah, Finn Harps in 1916 during the war. But their biggest loss was 11-2 against Everton. Their biggest loss, there being the same scoreline as Coventry's, 11-2. They lost 11-2 against Everton in 1890. The goal difference for Derby, doing the maths there, is a solid 3. That'll probably put them around mid-table with a very decent score there for Derby. Moving on now to Huddersfield Town. They were formed in 1908, and their biggest win is 11-0. Like a lot of teams there, seems a lot of them have been 11-0. They beat, oh my god, how am I going to say this? Heckmond Wish. I don't know how you say that, in 1900. Right on the bang on the dot, 1900. They beat them 11-0. Heckmond Wish. They sound like a German team. I don't know where they're from, though. Their biggest loss, on the other hand, was 10-1 against Man City in 1987, so a very, very recent one there, which leaves Huddersfield with, again, a pretty much average one, which, if we did an average 2, would probably be the closest one, because there's been quite a few teams with 2. So, yeah, their average score is going to be 2, which, again, probably around mid to lower table for Huddersfield there. On to Luton Town now, and again, like Cardiff, they have actually got a very solid score. They were formed in 1885, and their biggest win was 15-0, a very solid win there for them against Great Yarmouth in 1914. 15-0, a very solid win. And their biggest loss was 9-0 against Small Heath in 1898. And doing the maths on that one, therefore, gives them a very, very solid score of 6. And I think anything above 5, or maybe even anything above 4, will definitely place you in the top 6 here. Which, again, yeah, a very solid score from Luton there, and that probably places them in the top 3 maybe. Now moving on to Middlesbrough. They were formed in 1876, and their biggest win was 11-0 against Scarborough in 1890. They just had to move in because I couldn't see it properly because my handwriting is absolutely awful. 11-0 again, like most teams in the league, a solid score of 11-0 scoreline, sorry. Pretty average, as most of the teams we've gone through. Hold on, let me just count. So far, we've gone up to Middlesbrough, right? And so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including Middlesbrough. 5 of the teams that we've done so far, including Middlesbrough, have had the scoreline of 11-0. So yeah, pretty average score there. And again, like most teams, their biggest loss is 9-0 against Blackburn in 1954. Therefore giving them a goal difference of 2. And like I've said many a time, this is probably going to place them mid to bottom of the table. Moving on now to Millwall, who were formed in 1885, and their biggest scoreline was against 2 teams in the same year, funnily enough. They beat Torquay and Coventry 9-1 in 1927. Was this Coventry's biggest loss? No, it wasn't Coventry's biggest loss. Yeah, as I've just said, they beat Torquay and Coventry 9-1 in 1927 in the same year, which is quite funny, to be honest. But then their biggest loss is also 9-1, and that was against Aston Villa in 1946. So both scorelines being the same, that gives Millwall a solid score of 0, which probably placed them down towards the bottom end of the table. Now moving on to Norwich City. They are next on our list, and they were formed in 1902. I think, oh no, Huddersfield were the first team to be founded in the 1900s. But yeah, Norwich City founded in 1902. Their biggest win is 10-2 against Coventry City in 1930. That game happened. But yeah, again, like Millwall, that was a game cancelled out by their... It's going to be cancelled out by their biggest loss, as they also lost 10-2 as their biggest loss against Swindon Town in 1908. Therefore, giving them a goal difference of 0, which again, like I've said many times, is probably going to place them around the bottom end of the table. Now moving on to Nottingham Forest, and again, they have got a very solid score here, like Luton Town and Cardiff City. They're founded in 1865, and their biggest win was 14-0 against Clapton in 1891, a very solid score from them there. And their biggest loss was 9-1 against Blackburn in 1937. So, doing the maths on that one, that gives Forest a very solid score of 6, which again, I think a score of 6 will probably place them top 4, 5, which again is very solid for Forest, as they will probably be in the top 6. Now on to the biggest goal difference I think you're probably going to ever see over any team in the entire world, of their biggest win and loss, maybe apart from, like, I don't know. But Jesus, what an absolute goal difference this is from Preston North End. Formed in 1897, their biggest win was 26-0. 26-0. Like, they nearly scored 30 goals in 90 minutes. Like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's like nearly a goal every 3 minutes. That's... Jesus Christ, man. The poor team that was on the end of that 26-0 drubbing was Hyde in 1887. And then I think Preston also might have the lowest loss as well. Their loss is 7-0, which is, I'm pretty sure, joint lowest with Brentford. They lost 7-0 against Blackpool in 1948. So for them, their goal difference totals up at 19, which is an easy first spot for them. Moving on now to QPR, they were formed in 1882, and their biggest win was 9-2 against Tranmere Rovers in 1960. And their biggest loss was 8-1 against Mansfield and Man United. Those to Mansfield in 1965 and Man United in 1969. So, yeah, those scorelines cancelling each other out, therefore giving QPR a goal difference of 0. Now on to the first of only 3 teams which are in the minus goal difference, and it's Reading, who are bottom of the table. I already know that because they are quite a way behind everyone else. They founded in 1871, and their biggest win, respectable, they beat Crystal Palace 10-2 in 1944. I think that says, yeah, it does. They beat Crystal Palace 10-2 in 1944, and their biggest loss, again, Preston. Why did Preston just hammer everyone? Because we'll just go on to it. Reading's biggest loss was 18-0 against Preston. And that's easily beat, like, a load of other clubs, like, highest scores. And yet that's not even close. That's like 8 goals behind. Preston are ridiculous, man, back in the day. But yeah, they lost 18-0 to Preston in 1894, therefore giving them a very poor goal difference of -10, which will see them bottom of the table. Now on to the second team, which is in the minuses, and it is Rotherham, newly promoted Rotherham. Their biggest win is 8-0 against Oldham in 1947, a very respectable and solid score there. However, I forgot to say when they founded, sorry. They were founded in 1925, and obviously, as I've just said, biggest win, 8-0 against Oldham in 1947. Their biggest loss, however, was 11-1 against Bradford in 1928. Which means their goal difference will be -2, which will see them in the bottom 3. Next up is Sheffield Wednesday, and obviously we were formed in 1867. That's just one of the things I know off by heart as a Wednesday fan. And our biggest win was 12-0 against Halliwell in 1891. A very good scoreline there, up towards the top end of the highest scores there. But however, our biggest loss was 10-1 against Aston Villa in 1912. There, poor result for us, as our goal difference then amasses to 3, which again is respectable. Like, in that area from like 7th to 12th, I reckon we are. So yeah, 7th to 12th, I'll take that as a Wednesday fan. Moving on now to Stoke City, formed in 1863, and their biggest win was 11-0 against Stourbridge in 1914, it says. And again, their biggest loss again to Preston. What is wrong with Preston? Why do they just hammer everyone? Preston, this is like nothing for them. This is like a 2-0 win for them compared to other teams. Like, they've won this one 10-0 against Stoke, and back in the day when like near the borderline, the turn of the millennium to 1900s, this would just have been like a 2-0 win to clubs nowadays. Just a comfortable 2-0 win for them. Blooming hell. Yeah, but this happened in 1889, sorry. They lost 10-0 to Preston, and therefore they get a goal difference of 1, which again, pretty average, probably down towards the bottom of the table. So, yeah, 1, pretty poor there from Stoke. Now on to Swansea City. Will probably be in the top 6 as they founded in 1912. Their biggest win was 12-0 against Sliema Wanderers in 1982, so pretty recent from them there. But their biggest loss was 8-0, and they lost twice 8-0 against Liverpool in 1990 and Monaco in 1991. So 2 very recent ones there from Swansea City, as they're 12 minus 8, 4. So again, I think that probably places them in and around the top 6 there from Swansea. So a very solid score for them. On to the penultimate team now, and it is recently relegated to Watford, and they're the only other team that are in the minuses. Formed in 1881, they lost their biggest win, was 10-1 against Lowestoft Town in 1976. And their biggest loss was 10-0 against Wolves in 1912. So the goal difference there is going to be -1, which will unfortunately see them finish in the bottom 3. On to the final team now before we go on to the table at the end of the video. And obviously the team is Wycombe Wanderers, the promoted side last season. And they've got actually a proper respectable score here. They'll definitely finish in the top 6. Formed in 1887, and their biggest W was 15-1 against Whitney Town in 1955. A very solid win for them. 15 is probably one of the highest amount of goals scored in the games here. Their biggest loss, on the other hand, was 8-0 against Reading in 1899. So for that one, doing the maths on that one, that gives them with a solid goal difference of 6, which as I've just said will probably see them finish inside the top 6 in this league. Alright then lads, now on to the table bit. We're just going to get straight into it basically. First we have Preston, 2nd is Cardiff, 3rd is Wycombe, 4th is Luton, 5th is Forest, 6th is Birmingham, 7th is Swansea, 8th is Derby, 9th is Wednesday, 10th is Blackburn, 11th Huddersfield, 12th Bournemouth, 13th Bristol City, 14th Middlesbrough, 15th Brentford, 16th Stoke, 17th Norwich, 18th Coventry, 19th QPR, 20th Millwall, 21st Barnsley, 22nd Watford, 23rd Rotherham, and 24th Reading to cap off the table. And that is the end of the video, lads. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, don't forget to drop a like rating down below. And if you're not already subscribed, feel free to sub. It would really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out my socials. It is DanTalksCFL on Instagram, TikTok and Twitch. I have recently started, just whenever I play games on my Xbox, I just stream it on Twitch. So yeah, go drop that follow. But yeah, thanks for watching the video, lads, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later, fellas. Like